What's up, family? Welcome everyone to Seasoned Brother. I am your host, Byron McDaniel. And today, our extinguished guest is DeAndre Maiden. And we know him as Dre. And I want to go ahead and just jump in and get started. And the way I get started is I always ask a question to the guest. And my first question is, you are the salt of the earth. What do you bring? Which one do you bring as the salt of the earth? Go ahead, Dre.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for having me on first, Byron. In terms of the question, I think that being a tenderizer would be the type of seasoning that I bring to the table. I think that looking at the various types, I think that multiple apply, but just throughout my experience in youth ministry, mentoring young men, one of the greatest rewards through this engagement for me has been the student that has moved on, has lived a little bit, and that comes back and says, Dondre, Mr. Maiden, the things that you told me when I was 16, I might not have been as receptive to hearing it, then might not understand how that truly applies to my life. But as I've lived, those jewels that you dropped on me really helped me view the world from a different perspective and helped me navigate some of the challenges that I came upon transitioning from adolescence into adulthood, going to college, starting careers or whatnot. And so I think that being a tenderizer would be that would describe the type of seasoning that I bring to the table in terms of being salt of the earth.
See, I like that. See, because what you told me is that it had to marinate for a little while before it impacted that person. It had to get to a place where it was starting to break down, that they would understand what you were trying to tell them. You know what? I think we miss out as men. And I know that you've been involved in youth ministry, you're a minister, but I think we miss out of bringing those nuggets to the generation behind us. Sometimes we get caught up in who we are and not understanding that we are to leave a deposit. Over the years, and I know you dealt with youth ministry, but over the years, what do you think some of the challenges are for us to impact and to change the life of the young men behind us? Because there's so many distractions for them, so many things that detour them and get them off track. So what do you think in your experience deters our young men from getting the information that they need?
You know, Again, 20 plus years in formal youth ministry, but a lot longer in terms of engagement with the young population. And I think that Byron, as you and I can, relate to being young at one point, one of the biggest challenges is that young people think that they know it all. They think that they've lived, they think that the material that they digest, whether it be on social media, whether it be through just their engagement with their peers, I think that there is often a sense that, hey, your time was different than mine. And the experiences that I live, like I'm the best person to be able to give myself advice. I mean, I can remember sitting down, and this is a little bit outside of the scope, but sitting down with a young man because I had taken some classes on day trading, and I had got to a point when I was making $100 a day, and I was like, well, let me show you some of these tips that I've learned from looking at charts. And he was like, I already know how to do that. My boy showed me how to do this. And, we're talking about 16-year-olds that really ain't making money. And I'm trying to hit them to some free game. And I think that the biggest part is that they bring this attitude a lot of times that, hey, I can make the best choices for myself. I have the best information, and that your time was so different than my time, which there is some truth to that. But, I don't want to go as far as calling it arrogance, but the biggest challenge, I think, and even raising my own children, is that just hearing that, like, I know what I'm doing, Dad. I don't need your advice. I mean, I think that relates to the larger youth population.
Now that's funny because they think and that we don't have the experience or we didn't go through it. But what they got to understand that there's nothing new under the sun. And it might not be the exact thing that we experienced, but we went through a lot of the things that they went through. and navigated it successfully to a degree that we are where we are. How do you get them to understand those roles and those experiences that you went through? Because as you said that you are a tenderizer, so that really has to drop and begin to settle into their spirit. So how do you help them get to that place?
I think one, trying to find ways that you can relate to them. One of the easiest forms, I think that music. I mean, we've heard the saying that music is generational, like it brings upon unity. And so, one of the best ways that I found to be able to relate is to be able to identify some of the artists that the young men can relate to. Even sometimes talking about just the lyrics of it, and then sort of just having, I think that once they allow you in, then being able to have these conversations. Okay, I didn't have the pressures of social media that you face. I didn't have the day-to-day, engagement. And there's a lot of literature and studies that talk about just how influential social media is. But what I can relate to is having this thing called the internet that, was revolutionary at the time, that my parents couldn't relate to being able to sit down and type on a web address and being able to go to different sites and make purchases. Or at the time, I think when I was a college student, just being on like instant messenger, that was revolutionary. And so I think that being able to have conversations like, okay, our challenges might not be the same challenge, but if you look at it internally, you'll see that some of the foundational aspects are still there. They're just delivered in a different media. Today, I know that you were saying that we experience the same challenges, and I'm not here to minister, but one of the things that I talk to the young men and women that come through my youth ministry is, John 10:10, like the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Like the tactics will be different, but the fundamental aspects of that killing and destroying is the same. And so I think that once you really have an opportunity to allow, or have the young folks allow you in, then you can really have like those type of conversations with them, that the tactic is different, the mission is the same. And then I've been able to pick up traction through one, having young folks trust me, and then two, finding there are areas that we can relate to each other.
That's one of the greatest challenges, is to get young men to trust the conversation, to trust the process, to trust the the things that we are saying to them to get them to the next level. One of the things is, how do you really get someone to listen? To listen to the degree that they are transformed or changed.
I think in terms of getting them to listen, one of the most powerful things that we can bring to the table is letting them know that we care about them. I think that some of the challenges that young men face is feeling like they're navigating the world themselves. A lot of times society characterizes our young people as lazy, not intentional, not driven. And so I think just showing them that you care, talking to them about things that are different than what you might originally come to talk to them about, asking basic questions, how's life going for you? What are some of the challenges you're facing? How's your relationship with your parents? And once I think that you show up consistently in a young person's life, I think that they'll begin to let you in, because they understand that you care about them. And then I think even having, again, these open-end types of questions that just don't drive directly to the heart of what you might be trying to accomplish. I mean, I know that in our small groups, I kind of do youth ministry through small groups. We always start off just asking, hey, did you watch the game last night? What did you think about the T-Wolves? I mean, a lot of people were coming into the conference finals thinking that they were going to be in the finals, and now they're down 0-3. What do you think about that? And then really getting them starting to talk. Yeah, I think Carl Anthony Towns kind of let folks down, and then being able to then take that next step from something that they're interested in talking about. Like, what are your future plans? Like, what are you planning to do after you finish high school? Have you identified the career that you're interested in? And so showing them that you care, and then being able to meet them on their level. A lot of times too, I think that young people, they have this certain sense of mistrust when adults just out of the blue engage with them, thinking that they want something out of them, or they have an ulterior motive, or that they're coming in with a certain mission and they're so focused on the mission that they miss the person that they're engaging.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Now, sometimes most of the youth, I should say, I shouldn't say most of it, a high percentage of them, they really don't care what you have to say until they examine who you are.
Right.
And they're looking for role models. They're looking for someone to lead in every aspect of their life, whether it's a peer, whether it's a mentor. They're looking for someone to be a model for them. And I don't like really using the word role model, but they're looking for a model, a mentor, a coach. What are some of the things, because I've seen your history. I've seen watching what you bring to the table. I monitor your social media. So a lot of times they're looking for positive role models. What are some of the things that you do to exemplify that mentorship to them? What are some of the things you do to show them who you are? Because if they read your resume, their minds would be blown of what you've done in a short period of life. It's one of the reasons I have you on because, you know, my tagline is, you know, a little salt and pepper to marinate the conversation. And you definitely have a little salt and pepper in the beard, but you got salt and
Yes.
pepper in the life too. And then, what do you do to be a great role model to the men that are looking up to you? What are some of the qualities you exemplify?
I think that the first quality that I exemplify would be humility. I think that in a lot of spaces, individuals that have achieved, they lead with their accomplishments and navigate in those spaces. Oh, I'm such and such. Oh, I lead this department. And I think that just immediately that creates a sense of, where our young people don't feel like they're at the level where they can engage with that person. And so I always lead with humility. Serving leadership is one of the leadership principles that I try to embody. And so when I engage with young people, it might be 2 months into the conversation where we have like an in-depth analysis about some of the things that I've done. I first try to lead with that. I care about you. I want you to make good choices. I want you to dream. I want you to dream big. And then I want to help you identify those steps that it's going to take to get to that dream. And then, 2 months into the conversation, individual may mention, hey, I had this encounter with the law. And then I was like, well, let's sit down and talk about it. And they're like, oh, you're a lawyer? Oh, you've been practicing law for 20 years. Oh, you are a senior executive. Oh, you lead three different branches of government. And then, it's when those conversations come out, I think it adds, some season onto it. I think it adds some respect. And then I think that young folks will look at you different. But I think a lot of times that if you lead with titles, if you lead with accomplishments, you create an environment where the young people don't feel like they're at a certain level where they can engage with you, or even that they may think that you are so high or that you're so big that you don't actually have time to really care about them and their personal circumstances. And then two, I just try to, outside of spirituality, my life principle is to do good and good things happen to you. And so just in terms of how I engage with people in the community, how I engage with my social media accounts, how you'll see me out in public, you'll always see me attempting to do good. That's not to say that there aren't times when, we fall short of that because, if you're out in the street, and I'm talking about the grocery store, I'm not talking about the literal street. People will rub you the wrong way. People will be having a bad day and you'll encounter situations where your goodness may be tested. But, for the most part, I just try to live good, try to do good, and try to give back.
But I don't think you try because I think it's exemplified by so much that you see and do. And, I think that's the first thing young men do is that they look and see what you're bringing to the table. I mean, they're going to check out your drip. They're going to check out your ride. They're going to check out your wife and your relationships. And then they're going to, after they've done the external inspection, to see what you're bringing to the table. And that's when they're doing that inspection, I think that's when they open up and want to use an old term we grew up with, be like Mike. Because
Right.
they're looking
Right.
for someone to be like or to emulate. What do you think some of the strategies for young men to help build them and to strengthen them? Because, a lot more people are coming from broken homes and broken families. What are you doing to help build them?
I think in terms of building, I think one of the first principles is being authentic. I think back through my entire history of youth ministry, of mentorship, of youth engagement, and I think that some of the most powerful conversations and relationships stemmed out of just authenticity, presenting yourself as somebody that has not always been at the level that you've been at. One of the most powerful sessions, and we just had a chance to kind of double back around like 7 years later. And one of the proudest moments for me was that I saw a young man who's now come back to volunteer with the youth group speak from a position of being healed. But I can remember 7 years prior having this conversation where I talked about the fact that I was struggling with my relationship with my dad, who was not involved in my life. And I talked about some of the struggles that I went through just, growing up in a single parent home and not having a male to kind of show me how to use tools and how to fix stuff. And through that authenticity or that authentic showing, I think that the young people that are in my sphere of influence, they saw, hey, he's accomplished a lot, but he didn't always have it together. And I think that then they'll start to identify their own shortcomings and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, but that's okay. That doesn't keep me from being able to live my dreams. And then being able to engage with a person that sees you as an inferior person, which we all are, I think that just creates a new level of baseline where there's a shared respect for having encountered some of the same problems that they have. And then being able to talk to them from a position of having experienced some level of healing. I mean, I think that we live our entire lives like going through some type of healing, but speaking from a perspective of being more healed and then being able to look at what you've accomplished. And then, the second thing I would think outside of authenticity is again, just demonstrating what you're trying to instill in them. It's one thing to preach a certain message. It's one thing to try to impart certain principles. But then if you're not living that, young folks will see that. They'll see that, hey, you're telling me to be, even killed and maintain composure. But then I see you out and I saw somebody, upset you and I saw you react the same way that I reacted. So how can you tell me that I need to do better when I don't see you doing better? I mean, I think always being conscious that somebody's watching. I consider myself a low level, minister or whatnot, but it never fails that someone will see me at church the following Sunday and say, hey, I saw you, I didn't speak, but I saw you, at the store on Sunday, or I saw you out at the park, so people are always watching. And I think just being conscious that I'm trying to teach certain things and folks are looking at me to see if I'm living that. Uh,
Dre,
And then, the third thing I would just say is just, never being too high to do any type of job, with youth ministry that I'm currently engaged in, get to the church, before 8, we'll do 2 services, go through 12:30. And then at 1 o'clock, you might see me sweeping the gym floor, and then, I remember one young man said, you sweep the floor too? And I was like, man, we do it all, full service around here. There's no job that is above me doing. And I think, again, that just shows, the young folks that you really care about them, that you're taking time to make sure that they have a clean space to come into.
now, Dre, you just talked about coming from a single mother household where you didn't always have a male figure in your life to point you in a direction. And I think that might be the reason that you had gravitated and scooped up the young men and young women, but probably more the young men based off your experience. Tell us some of the things that transpired in your life to get you to the place because, you've gone through multiple levels of education and life and experiences, and you didn't have you're a first generation of leading your own children, yet alone leading other people's children. What in that experience made you the man that you are today?
Good question. As I was perusing social media a couple of years ago, I saw this meme that I felt like encapsulated everything about who I am. And it said, be the person that you wish you had when you were young. And so, growing up, again, it was just me and my mom, again, first generation college students, didn't have anybody to talk to about what going to college would look like. And I just remember a lot of times growing up, like wishing I had a consistent male figure that I could talk to about advice, that I could sit down and talk to about career plans, and then feeling the stigma of going to events where other, teens my age, had their fathers like showing them how to shoot a basketball or how to play baseball. And I just remember a lot of those moments just feeling really empty, getting into relationships with members of the opposite sex and not knowing how to navigate that, not having a consistent male to be able to come to and say, hey, I want to ask her out. Like, what should I do? Or what should I do? Now we've been dating for a couple of months. Like, how do I prepare for like our 2-month anniversary, which, when you're young, you think that's like a really big deal. And then just really going throughout life, just kind of navigating, on my own. I mean, there would be men that would step up. I remember one of the deacons from my church showed me how to tie a tie. And so I learned different things from different people that stepped up in my life, but it was really navigating, a lot of situations just on my own, trying to learn as much as I could from the males that were involved in my life. And there were definitely some influential males that I met along the way. And then get into a place where, okay, now that I've achieved a certain level of success, and then realizing that, hey, I have, even, as a 25-year-old male, even as a 30-year-old male, there are certain things that I can give to those that are coming behind me, even though I don't have life figured out. I'm at a place where they aspire to get to. And so that really, I think I was a law student at the University of Maryland when I really first dove into like a formal type of leadership, leading young people situation with the Baltimore City Youth Congress and the Baltimore City Teen Court, and really being able to just really impart some of the things that I had learned as a 22, 23-year-old male into some high school young men that were coming behind me. And they found that to be invaluable, just talking about some of those experiences. And so really just trying to be for other people what I wish I had in my life has been, really that guiding principle that has led me to be so engaged with young people.
It's interesting because you speak of Be More and Baltimore is not a easy place to deal with young men. They have a lot of challenges coming their way. And God used you at an early age to mentor and to speak life into those men. Is that What are some of the key strategies you used at that time to reach those brothers that are struggling? And what can we use today to reach those brothers that are struggling first with their mental health? Because think about the things that they lack in those areas. I know me growing up, one of the greatest challenges not always having a male every day in your household. It becomes a struggle in your identity, and then you look outside of that to try to find your identity. So, what were some of the key tactics that you used, especially with some of those brothers in Be More?
Yeah, no, in Baltimore again, it's just getting back. Like I found out that once the young man knew you cared about them, that just opened the door to you being able to have like the direct ability to truly mentor and guide them. I can remember, there was a situation where I was meeting a group, and it was this area called Mondawmin, which is kind of like in one of their urban, hood areas. And I can remember the first time I was driving my car to meet with a group, and I hit a young man's dog, and it was a group of people out on the stoop, and the dog ran in front of my car. And I can remember at that second having just like my life feel like it flashed between my eyes. I was like, do I keep driving because I don't want to turn around? Because it's like 5 or 6 like, really intimidating looking guys that were on the stoop. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stop. I'm going, say my short prayer. And so I said, hey, I'm going to meet with this youth group down at Madama Mall in one of the rooms. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit the dog. He's like, I just beat that dog for running out in the road. That's what he gets. So the dog wasn't fatally wounded or whatnot. But then even dealing with them, they was like, oh, you care about our young people, man. Go on about your business, man. We ain't got be with you. And then with the young man that I was engaged with, I think really just showing them that I cared about them, that I'm here, I'm showing up for you. I could stay over on campus at Maryland and be about my academic studies, but I'm here for you. And I think that, originally there is a sense of mistrust because they're like, okay, people come in all the time and they want to take pictures and they want to take video of what they're doing because they want to self promote, but I enter these spaces. I'm not trying to take no pictures. I'm not trying to like advance myself. I'm here because of you, and it never hurts to show up with some pizza or food, because young men can eat. And I think that once, 3-4 weeks down the road, they're like, okay, he really cares about us. And I think that really just soften their hearts. Some of the young men that I work with ended up going through the juvenile justice system and then being able to talk to them years later, saying that they wish they had followed, some of the advice that I had given. But living in Baltimore, I mean, there's a lot of societal pressure, to just kind of just adapt to the environment that is around you and kind of just live that lifestyle. And then some of the young men went to college and they're raising families now and having conversations with them about some of the wisdom that they gained from these sessions has just been invaluable. And then I want to take the second part of the question that you talked about in terms of mental health, because I think that there's a stigma amongst Black men about really seeking professional help. And I think that one of the successes that I've had in my life was really acknowledging the fact that I needed help. I needed professional help to kind of deal with some of the issues that I struggled with, growing up. And I want to say that looking at certain TV programs, which I think that things like This Is Us that shows Sterling Brown's character having a therapist. All American is another show that I watched, and Spencer James, the lead character in that show, went through therapy. And I think that seeing Black men on television kind of opened my eyes to the need to have my own therapist and in dealing with, the relationship I had with my father, which I came to find out that there is actually a term for it. It's called the father wound. Really helped me to be able to address some of the things that even as a 40, I'm turning 45 on Thursday, but even as a 40-year-old man that, having these issues that I hadn't dealt with was really showing up in certain areas of my life about being able to trust and being able to, go into situations and realizing that, I don't have to carry this burden that I've been carrying. So therapy has been one of the major, more recent wins that I've had in my life, being able to open up and really get professional help on dealing with some of the issues that I brought into adulthood with me.
Now, now you and I both know, yes, we all need mental health therapy. What do we do for those that can't afford a licensed clinical? Because, growing up, for some of us, church was our therapy.
Absolutely.
The pastors and the brothers that would pull us aside was our therapy. What do we do for those that can't economically afford to get the mental health that they need? What do we do to help them?
So, I mean, in terms of helping them, I consider the small group sessions that I engage in, I consider those to be therapy because, a big part of that, one thing in leading a successful small group is talking really 1/3 of the time that you spend with young folks. And, whether that's a small group or whether that becomes one-on-one conversation, but really being able to just create a space where young people feel open to really share their innermost thoughts, to be able to share the things that they're struggling with. And then, from the layperson therapy, and I know that there are some mental health professionals that are going to be like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You should leave that to us. But like you said, there is, a system that we currently live in where access to mental health treatment is not prevalent. And so I would rather have a young man be able to have a conversation with me than to not have a conversation at all. And so being able to, again, listen and then being able to draw upon my experiences, to draw upon the things that I've had imparted in me and being able to sew that back, into to a young person. And then I think, looking at it from another perspective as people that have achieved and do have a little bit of disposable income, I think that finding ways to resource some of these community groups that do provide formal professional mental health counseling to just create a greater system of access so that the individuals that truly need mental health therapy can afford it. I mean, I will oftentimes encounter a young person. I'm like, well, I can help them. I can really provide mentorship. I can provide coaching at a certain level, but they really need professional counseling. And I think they're really trying to increase this access to professional counseling is an obligation that I think that we all should take some part in trying to resource.
Now, the stigma of that has started to diminish, that people accepting that we can get mental health. But how do you really erase that stigma in our community? Because it's still a stigma because people think that if you get therapy, you're weak and they don't see the strength in getting therapy. So how do we help erase that stigma?
I mean, I think that we have to, one, be open about some of the things that we might have utilized. I'll see eyes like pop wide open when I talk about the fact that, hey, I've been through therapists. I still have a therapist. I don't meet with the therapist as often as I did when, I first engaged with them, but I still meet with them, on a monthly, bi-monthly basis. And I still find it to be helpful. And seeing those eyes open up like, oh, wow, Mr. Dondre, goes through therapy. And then I think too, like, I think that we as a community need to reevaluate some of the principles that we've been standing upon. I can remember playing, youth sports and you encounter an injury. And although it might not have been my dad, it might have been an uncle or a cousin. They'd be like, oh, shake it off. Don't cry, and it's
Yeah.
just those,
Yeah.
those concepts that we just take on as young men that we carry into life. I can remember reading a book by Michael Basin, and it was a fiction book, but the title of it was Men Cry in the Dark. And I can remember like relating to that because, there was a time when I didn't feel like it was okay to show emotion because that kind of made me less of a man. And so then I think that it takes on this societal, leg of its own because that concept is kind of shared across Black men. And then we're raising young men to think that it's wrong to show emotion. And so I think it really requires reimagining what we think the true concepts of a man are. It's
Mm,
not necessarily to be tough. It's not
mm,
necessarily to be physically strong. But the true concept as a man is am I going to leave this world in a better place than it was when I got here? Am I going to successfully raise my children? Am I going to
mm.
successfully lead my household? And I think that these are the concepts that we really need to glorify instead of, being the muscle bound, strong, I'm not afraid to fight type of imagery that I think that a lot of us have grown up on.
More and more, our young men are getting their imagery and their thoughts from Instagram, TikTok, from the social media platforms of what brothers out there are espousing as the definition of a man. How do we fight against that? How do we circumvent that to get the brothers back to the place that they should be? Because you have to admit, we're fighting an uphill battle to win the lives of young men. What are some of the things we need to do to circumvent that process?
I mean, that's such a great question. I think that we need to glorify the basic and boring. I think that, in terms of the imagery, I think that one, like calling it out, like a lot of what we see on Instagram, a lot of what we see in music videos or we hear in music, it's not real. That a lot of folks will create this image of I've achieved. I mean, that there are some folks now I know that, I see them take pictures with cars that they've rented or that they've seen at Tyson's Corner or somewhere. And then they create this image that this is the life that I'm living. And I think just really, I think that having more of the normal type of life, evidence in social media, evidenced on social media. So I think that they're taking the pressure off ourselves for one, because I know that, there was a time when I was like, oh, I got to find the perfect, Instagram post. I got to find the perfect picture. That really wasn't reality for me, so I think that really redefining what success really is and really teaching that to young folks and really, speaking out against social media. I mean, I think that social media has purpose. I think that it's great. I really like the connection aspect of it. But I think that having those real conversations, like that's not real, and really talking about what real is and really redefining success and then glorifying the basic, man, I think it's a heck of a life to grow up and raise kids and put them through college and have a good job to go to. And I think that a lot of times, like just the societal pressure, like a lot of our young men grow up thinking that that's not what I want. I deal with that, oftentimes with young men that hear things in music or that see videos, and that's what they aspire to. And you ask them, well, how do you plan on getting there? They don't have a concrete plan for achieving it. They just know they want to pop bottles, or they want to date Instagram models, or they want to drive, super expensive foreign cars. And they think that's what success is. And so I think really at an early age, starting off saying success is not that, but it's this, it's being basic. It's mentoring, it's raising children, it's having successful families, it's having a normal style lifestyle. And I think that kind of creates a different end goal. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because again, flashy is flashy for a reason. But I think again, like just really having these real conversations with our young people, and really talking about, just sharing our own experiences. And like, I would look at my life now and say that I've achieved more success than I ever thought I would. And I'm completely happy, and really talking about what happiness looks like for me. I know that might not be a spot on answer, but I think that would be, one of the recommendations I would have.
Well, Dre, I think that it was a spot on answer because Dre, I'm gonna rewind back to the fact that you came out of a single parent household. And I'm not gonna go through everything that you've accomplished because that would take another hour. But the fact that you went to college, you not only did you get your BA, that you went back and got your Juris Doctorate and became a lawyer. The fact that you went back and got your doctorate of ministry at Liberty, and said it's not about me, but it's about the people. Like, everything that you've done was never about you. It continues to point that you were there to touch lives. Even the job you do today points to the fact that you were positioned to touch someone's life in spite of how your life started. What are you doing to position young Black men in that same area by being a support system to them? Because that's where they're really lacking. And I think God is using you to be a spotlight on those areas. What are you doing to address those young men and give them stronger support systems?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that just, the way that I spend my time, I mean, I definitely devote a large amount of my disposable time towards, mentoring and ministry with young folks. There's an organization here in Fredericksburg called the Teen Enrichment Network that has like a formalized mentorship with various high schools that are throughout the area. And I think providing, myself as the biggest resource that I have in terms of being able to devote time to provide group mentoring. There's always teams that will reach out to say, hey, I want to talk to you about, what it took to become a lawyer. I want to talk to you about some of the other things that you become involved in. And so, I think just really, really creating the time and space, to give back. I mean, I always look at just throughout my life, again, having people that, even if it was non-formal, that just would just really sow into my life. There are times now in church where college students will come home and, that I'll drop some money in their hand just because folks did that for me. And so I think that providing the same type of support that individuals may have given me, and then also defining what the type of support that I would have liked to have had, and then trying to fill those spaces. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for professional Black men to really be able to give back. And, there are organizations out there that do provide mentorship, but I think, again, a lot of informal mentorship opportunities can exist with identifying individuals that may be headed to the wrong direction, maybe having their eyes set on something similar to what you've accomplished, and then really reaching out to them. At the end of this past school year here with the Teen Enrichment Network, one of the things that I really liked that they did was that they tried to pair students that were going to be going off to college and had certain career goals with individuals they already knew were in that field. One of the young men, wants to become a mechanical engineer. That's not my forte. That's not my strength. But I do have people in my network that are mechanical engineers. So I was able to connect one of the men, really successful men that I met through Peloton with one of the students that was going to be going to North Carolina A&T to major in mechanical engineering and really creating that informal network. And so I think that also understanding that we don't have to have all the answers, but as professional Black men, a lot of times we will have people that are within our network that we can sort of connect with young folks. And of course, I had the conversation with the mechanical engineer ahead of time saying, hey, would you be willing to talk to this young man and give him some insight about your experiences and whatnot? And so I think being a resource and then identifying others in our network might be able to be resources to the young men that we encounter in our lives.
Man, Dre, I am more than appreciative of what I see you doing in the lives of men. And I think that as seasoned brothers, we have to begin to point to, and not just the young men, we got to point to the older brothers to say, you got to step up because
Hmm.
the young men around us are struggling and they need the help. And you've already been through something. And even if you not where you think you are, there's things that you have to offer. I like the fact that you just said you went to that mechanical engineer. You found a resource for those brothers that could get the help that they need and be pointed in the right direction. And we have to begin to applaud those things and begin to tell those young men not only that we're here for you, but we got a little salt and pepper, a little experience that will help you navigate these obstacles and these issues. So I got one last question. Well, actually two, but so the first one is, who won the battle, Drake or Kendrick?
Who won the battle, Drake or Kendrick? I think that Kendrick has the best song out of it. I mean, as you know, in terms of the charting with "They Not Like Us," at first I came into the situation kind of rooting for Drake because I feel like that Drake gets picked on because people don't think he's as hard. I mean, I think that Drake has found his lane and he operates successfully in it. One of the things that Drake has done to become relevant or stay relevant is that he reaches back out. I mean, he finds a little baby before they become a little baby and he does music with them. Or now Four Bags, he has a couple songs with Four Bags that up and coming artists that the young people relate to. And so he's found his lane. And so I think that he kind of got pulled into a lyrical battle that wasn't necessarily his lane. That being said, I think that Drake held his own, whether he used ghostwriters or whatnot. I think that some of the songs that came from Drake were good. But in terms of the one song, I think "They Not Like Us" is the best song out of the entire catalog of diss tracks from this rap battle.
See, I'm going to go straight with Kendrick only from the standpoint that Kendrick, like you, came from a background where lyrics was a part of his life.
That's
Whereas, whereas Drake came from an environment where he walked into something and got his success. Kendrick lived it. And the reason I brought that up is because, you know, that's what young folks want to see, people that have gone through something and it comes out of them. And that's the only reason I think Kendrick won that battle because he lived it. And
absolutely.
it just flowed out of him natural. And when he says he's not like us, he's telling you that I was born in hip hop. I was born in an environment that cultivated and created me. You became that, you walked into it without the struggles. And I think people love to know that somebody has made it through the struggle and they can relate with that person a little bit more because success will fade. But if you're real, they know when you're real.
Absolutely.
So, on this note, what are you doing to continue to show brothers that you're seasoned and that you're here to help them put a little flavor into their life?
Really just being available. I mean, again, I think I've talked about, leading the youth ministry at my church. I serve as a mentor in the teen enrichment network here in Fredericksburg. I'm always looking for opportunities to engage in mentorship. Professionally, I created the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility plan that my legal office is implementing now, and part of that was to engage in mentorship. So I'm serving as a professional mentor to a younger attorney that wants to get to the senior executive service where I am now. And so just really always trying to find opportunities to give back, and being available. And then, I just want to just sort of highlight one of the factors that you raised earlier is just identifying others that sometimes might not even feel like they've achieved enough success to be a mentor. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a young man that came through youth ministry that wanted to be a carpenter. And then knowing carpenters within my network, approaching the gentleman that has his own carpentry business and saying, would you be willing to sit down and talk to this young man? He's like, who, me? Like, I ain't done anything. I ain't been to college. I don't have no formal education. And so then I think too, being able to just helping others identify the greatness that is within them, and then helping them see that, hey, I can be a resource to somebody coming behind me. And so I think that everybody has something to share. I mean, one of the best mentorship relationships, I'm gonna give a not or a shout out to my barber. He just does real life mentorship. He's been incarcerated. He started his own business, and every day he's in the barbershop, he's speaking into young men's lives and then really helping him just really see like, man, you got so much to offer. Like, don't let your past define who you think you are and what you think you have to give. Because I mean, I've seen him just turn lives around. And so being the best that I can be and then helping other people realize the greatness that is in them so that they can be the best that they can be.
Dre, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being the man that you are to impart life. And this won't be our last engagement, but I want to say I really appreciate all that you're doing in the kingdom, but not just the kingdom, but in your direct community. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being a part of Seasoned Brother, and looking forward to having you again.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Byron. Thank you.